I do want to ask you something, and this was really funny because I was preparing for this interview and I happened to get a robotext that came from one Senator, Mallory McMorrow.
That's me.
And I liked it and I actually used it in this because it talked about the fact that your approach for running for US Senate is the same as the one you took for running for the Michigan State Senate, i.e., no bullshit. Let's talk about what no bullshit means in your run.
I mean, I've always called it like it is, and we live in a moment right now where I think we have to acknowledge that, particularly in a state like Michigan, people voted for Donald Trump. We can't pretend like this did not happen and bury our heads in the sand. And to me, that means there were enough people who are so rightfully angry and frustrated with the status quo that they were willing to blow it up because that's what he stands for. I had no shortage of people say that to me in my first run, and I was a surrogate for Vice President Harris on the Harris campaign, and I heard that in November that people knew that he was a felon, people knew that he said all of these things, and they knew about Project 2025, and they didn't care because they weren't doing as well as they had hoped, and they weren't as successful as they wanted, and that meant that the institution had failed, and he was willing to blow it up. There's also just, so I think I heard this metaphor once from a constituent, and I think about it all the time, that it feels like Democrats and Republicans are sitting down at a table playing chess, and the Republicans have flipped the table over and set the house on fire, and Democrats are still planning our next move. So there's, this fear to like break out of the institution, and you hear about norms and rules. And that's not to say that you lie and you do the same things, but you have to call bullshit bullshit.